So we're here with Barry Lavalley on one of our first sessions in regards to retirement. We're going to cover a whole bunch of topics today, Barry. First, I want to say welcome to Calgary.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you for coming down. Tell us a bit more about yourself, your company, and what do you do?
I am the president of the Retirement Lifestyle Center. We've been around since 1997, and we focus on helping people understand the non-financial aspects to retirement, the transitions that you go through. My formal education's in psychology, which I never became a psychologist, but I have continued to go back and pick up my courses and everything else so that I have updated my own understanding. And what I've turned that into is an understanding of a lot of areas of life that people go through that are affected by this transition. And that's built a body of work for me, and I now am able to deliver seminars and books and podcasts and et cetera around the world.
So you're global.
I
This is
am.
not just a Canadian phenomenon. Tell us about some of the places that you've been to and some of the learnings that you had with different countries and different individuals.
You know what the biggest learning is? It's all the same.
Is it?
It's interesting. If you go to India, where I finished taping some stuff in Mumbai a couple of weeks ago, or Hong Kong or Singapore or Australia, etc., with all places that I've been recently, it's all the same. People are people. Retirement is still an issue, whether you're in mainland China or anywhere else, and you're going through a transition into the next phase of life. Now, some cultures are a little more attuned to looking at the future and thinking about where they stand and, in terms of the greater good and trying to live a life of purpose. Others are not. Others are not so attuned. And it's interesting when I say that because the people who are generally not as attuned are people in the Western world.
Okay.
Who have got this vision of retirement, that it's a 30-year-long weekend and that this is a life of leisure and we don't have to think about it, don't have to plan about it. Now, if I get into this airy-fairy Zen stuff, then, it's going way beyond my comfort level. So they don't plan, they don't think about it, they make dream, but dreams are in episodes. Elsewhere, if you go to the Far East cultures, they very much think about what retirement is. And the Japanese call it second life, which is when you get to a point in your life where all the younger people look up to you, but you are at the point where you dispense wisdom, that this is the ultimate in your life. And so you focus on how do I dispense wisdom and how can I earn or learn more wisdom for myself. So interesting in the different cultures in their approach, but the concepts are the same.
Same fears, same concerns.
Yeah. Some appreciate the fears a lot more than others do, but you're right, same fears. You've still going to have relationship issues everywhere, it seems. You've got kids that aren't going to leave even though they're 40. All of those things are present in all societies.
Okay.
So
when we start talking about the individual and the transition to retirement, we talk about it in three different phases. Let's talk about the fun years, the not so fun years, the get me the heck out of here stage. Let's start off with the fun years. People are transitioning. They're thinking about it now. It's getting closer. What are some of the things that the average person needs to think about when they're transitioning to that date when they're going to say, I'm ready to retire?
Well, I think you have to define who you are first and foremost. Interesting, I read a book not long ago by an author named Chip Conley, who's the head of Airbnb globally. And he's talking about the modern elder, which he picked up, I think, from Ken Dykewald, who wrote the Age Wave many years ago. And he's now calling people the modern elder. And I looked at that and I thought, okay, so this person that we're talking about, if they've got the enthusiasm and the drive to go forward, that's the modern elder.
Okay.
That's what I view myself as. So I don't look at this as the fun years, because I think we look at this time now as if now it's a perpetual weekend and it's holidays and it's fun, and that's not what retirement is.
Okay.
So I think a better way to look at what you might call the fun years might be the enlightened years, getting to understand what it is that you want out of life and then going to get it. And that includes things like balance, certainly includes happiness. It includes satisfaction with life, and it includes a desire to keep learning.
Okay.
So that to me would be the first phase of what we might call the fun years. It's a repositioning, but it's really an enlightenment time.
Yeah, because a lot of individuals, I ask them, what do you want to do in retirement? Travel. I want to work out more, be more healthy, and those are short-term weekend goals.
They're all the things you do on a weekend, right?
Yeah.
Right. It's like if I can do this, if I like doing it on weekends or my holidays, I get 30 years of this. But that's not really. Retirement's just life.
Yeah.
But the big change is that rather than being influenced by outside forces, your family, your work, now you have control. And successful retirees are those people who take control, who believe, as my father used to say, if it's to be, it's up to me. And so you become very introspective. That's why we call it the enlightening years. You're enlightening yourself, though, as opposed to having other people tell you what you should do.
And that's a big challenge because people have been accustomed to the 9 to 5. They've been their identity in some cases have been based upon their careers or their children. And so how do you become enlightened? How do you find out more about you? I think that's a real big challenge.
I think you got to figure out who you are first. There was a great exercise that I use in my own workshops, but it was not mine. It was first done, I think, with the U.S. military back in the 40s or 50s. And it's called the I am exercise. And basically what it is a list of I am statements. And you have to fill out as many as you can for who you are. Like, I am. In my particular case, I would start off and I would say, I am a husband. I am a father. I am an educator. I am happy. I mean, all the things that you are. And then look at that list and say, all right, from this point on, I want to honor those things. I want to be comfortable with who I am, not with what somebody tells me I should be. As we go into this phase of life, there's a lot of uncertainty about who we are because we have spent all this time being so defined by what we did. And some broke through that, right? But most people are, your concept of what happiness is or your concept of what success is came from what other people told you. Whereas this is a period of your life where the only person who tells you what success or happiness is you.
Yeah.
So we have to get to that point where we're willing to now to accept our own judgment on ourselves and be happy with that.
That's an interesting part when you bring up judgment, because I think many people who transition or are in retirement are looking at how their lifestyle needs to be based upon how others judge them.
Yeah.
And they're valuing that judgment of people that they don't really care about.
Isn't that the case? Because of the way that we grow up, we are very subject to social biases. And what social biases are the ways that others see us. So, social biases, we are more likely to do something if other people that we know, that we respect, do the same thing. Or we are more likely to do something if it's going to increase our standing socially. Those kinds of things are social biases. As we get to this point in life, it's very tough to turn around and say, you know what, I just don't give a darn anymore. I'm just going to go and march to my own drummer. Let me give you an example. We're selling our house in Nanaimo, British Columbia. It's a nice house. Overlooks the ocean, but it's big. My wife doesn't like to do housework, and she wishes I would do more housework. So we just looked at this thing and said, we love this house, but we are going to downsize.
Okay.
So in looking at downsizing, we had to look at what would we like to do. One of the things that came up right out of the blue was, why don't we buy a boat, live on a boat?
Okay.
I would never have considered something like that because I had to have a big house that I could entertain and have people come to. So I'd be going from a 4,500 square foot house to a boat that couldn't be any bigger than 1,000 square feet. Now, we haven't made that decision yet, but the fact is that we're looking at things now to say what works for us, as opposed for what do we care our friends think one way or another. Because I know I've got friends that will say, "You're moving where?
Yeah.
Let me get this straight."
Correct.
So
Correct. So you've seen a change in your life where you had a viewpoint of entertaining, being involved with people at your home, and now has that changed? Has that, is it a difference in values all of a sudden?
I don't know if it's a difference in values, but it's some of the values that I might have had, some of the motivations have changed to now focusing on what we want to live the life that we want. As far as the house goes, because a lot of people go through this, all right, should I downsize or whatever, and yet they continue to stay in a house that doesn't meet their needs anymore. All I'm concerned with is, does this fit the lifestyle that we want for ourselves? If we wanted that lifestyle of being the entertainers and having the fancy yard and all that stuff, we'd continue on with it. But that's not who we are. The people that we are, between my wife and I, have decided that we want to simplify and that we want to take any stress out of our lives that's negative. And I talk a lot about this in my workshops, as you know. And part of doing that looked at where do we want to live. Now, there's still the decision to be made, because would moving to a boat cause us more stress than where we are? And the answer is, I don't know, but we have to seriously think about it. I bring this thing up, though, because there are things on the table that might not have been on the table before.
And that's normal. I think people sometimes don't realize that what they wanted when they first started into retirement or a certain phase in their life will change over the years. And so what you may want in your 50s and 60s will be different than what you want in your 70s and 80s potentially.
Yeah, but when you say it's normal, for a lot of people it's not. There's this thing called continuity theory, right? Where the older that you get, the more you want to keep what you've got. And so a lot of people just want nothing to change, just stay where they are.
Yeah.
But what I'm thinking is, okay, if I am going into enlightenment, then I have to be open to whatever I'm going to need to take the stress out of my life and give me more balance. And that, to me, is the goal of my enlightenment, is to give myself more balance and no stress.
Is there a process you go through to find out about how to become more enlightened? I think the challenge, like you said, we're creatures of habit. We like to keep things the way they have always been, and then something triggers in your life, and you want to maybe ignite a change or be more enlightened. But how do you actually go through that process?
Well, let's not kid ourselves. I'm not here as Mr. Enlightened.
Okay.
It's always a work in progress, as you know,
sure.
but it's a goal that you try and attain. And by the way, I'm not going to go all Zen on you
Okay.
here, but it's a goal, and the goal is, all right, look at the areas of my life that are important to me, and you know, I love my life dearly, or love my wife dearly also, but we look at it together and say, all right, look at the areas of our life, and what do we want out of each of those areas, and what's important to us about those areas. The first step for me in trying to gain an enlightenment is to look at the big picture and say, well, what is the big picture?
Okay.
It's not money, although we have some financial goals, but they are means to an end, not an end in itself. It's achieving the life that would let us lead a life that we're happy in, knowing that it's always going to change. So I guess the first thing is to be open to enlightenment. In other words, to say, what do I really want? Now, I would never have thought that was an issue. Don't people automatically think like that? No,
yeah.
they don't.
They don't.
They
You're
don't. Right? They go into this period of life and they plan for it, like we talked the 30-year-long weekend, or what are you going to do in return? I'm going to travel.
Yeah.
You know, well, great. That enlightens that part of you. But much of this for me and for my wife is self-understanding, knowing who I am, and being happy with who I am. And that's always a work in progress for everybody, no matter what they tell you. And it's also lifelong education, continuing to educate myself in what's there, what's not there, understanding myself better. So there's that, and being open to becoming enlightened. And again, you know, like I haven't climbed to the top of any mountain to find some guy sitting there or some woman in the cat crouch, waiting to give me the word.
Yeah.
But it's just, do I understand life a little bit better? Because that to me, at my age, which is 66, that to me is my opportunity. And so I'm going to take it.
Let's talk about relationships. I think one thing you've mentioned throughout this piece about potentially moving into a boat or downsizing or putting out all the options on the table